All right, I want to put out a response video to this video that Merb put out today, just to underscore his intellectual bankruptcy, his lack of intellectual integrity. So let's play a little bit and see what this is all about.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I got a lot of really bad comments. Not bad comments, I guess, bad arguments in my last video that I put up on Sunday, which the irony isn't lost on me that in my video on Sunday, one of the major premises was that James Freeman was relying on bad arguments. James Freeman's bad argument was insinuating that being a cop was immoral, never proving it, but just insinuating it in his little, well, I'm going to pretend that I did an immoral job to see how the cop reacts to somebody else doing an immoral job. Of course, failing to grasp the distinctions between immoral and illegal, and failing to grasp that the role of a police officer is to enforce the law, to enforce legal things, or to restrict you from doing illegal things.
Okay, so not 100% accurate in his interpretation of what James Freeman did. Let's take a look at and see what Merb is talking about.
Like what you're doing is fulfilling some false sense of justice that you have to fulfill.
No.
Yeah, I don't. For the money, right?
The money is the paycheck. I got to get paid.
Yeah,
this is a job I do.
I get it, brother.
There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has a job to pay for what they need.
Yeah.
Food, a home, and everything else. That's not.
In all seriousness, man, I used to live out here in Tucson, and I used to pimp a few hoes. For real. I used to pimp a few hoes over on the west side, and people used to hate on me all the time. But you know what? I had 2 kids at the time. You know what I mean? I got
Look at what the cop's doing. He's just balancing his hands like, oh yeah, same, right? Same. So basically, what's going on here is the police officer saying, hey, I just do my job so that I can get a paycheck, you know. I'm just doing a job like anybody else. This is just a job. And James Freeman said, yeah, I know. I used to pimp hoes too for money, and people gave me a lot of grief about that too, you know. And so he writes down here, I didn't actually do this job, but I just wanted to see how he would react to me doing something he might believe is immoral for money, right? James Freeman is not indicating that James Freeman believes that pimping hoes is immoral. What he's doing is relating that to something that officer just doing my job here might believe, because he's wearing a uniform. And a lot of people do believe, you know, that pimping hoes is an immoral occupation. And of course, the police officer's response here is pretty much a non-response. Let's continue to see what this.
Yeah, I can say different things about that. I mean, that's
right.
Very different.
But I get where you're coming from, though.
He doesn't even want to talk about it, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the response I would expect.
You know what I mean? You do what you got to do for the money, and whether it's pimping hoes
I got a job, I'm gonna do my job.
The thin blue line.
So yeah, I mean, it's not the same as what Merb is saying down here in the comment section. You know, I asked very clearly, where's my comment at? Yeah, right here. How is pimping hookers immoral? Adults engaging in free enterprise is not hurting anyone. Is not immoral, and Freeman's response is, or Merb's response is, well, ask Freeman. Well, I would think that Freeman would say that it isn't immoral. He was just using it as an example, as something he believed that the police officer might think is immoral. He's just trying to make a point, and you know, I think it was a valid point. But Merb's point is that not all police officers Police officers don't need to weigh whether something is moral or immoral. They're just following orders, right? They're just upholding the law. Their job is not to determine morality. Their job is to just determine whether the law has been broken and to lock people up, punish accordingly.
So that distinction between a legal and an illegal job, a lawful and an illegal job, is something that is very integral to what James Freeman is trying to argue, and yet he ignores it completely. But there were a lot of bad arguments, and the first bad argument is directly related to that, where people want to argue that because cops arrest for contempt of cop, and I'm using that in huge air quotes, that they are not just enforcing the law, and that they do things based on whether they find them to be moral and immoral. Contempt of cop, whether the cop is upset with you or not, isn't a moral decision by the cop. It's an emotional decision, but it's not necessarily a moral decision by the cop. And the cops don't arrest for contempt of cop. Cops can only arrest for violations of the law.
No kidding, right? Merb is what we would have called a moto individual when I was in the military, master of the obvious. No one has ever claimed that literally police are locking people up for contempt of cop. No one literally believes that that's an actual charge anywhere. What they're saying is that there's a lot of bullshit charges that police make up to lock people up. Disturbing the peace or whatever. What do they call it? Interfering. You're interfering with my investigation. When David Boren is 20 or 30 feet away videoing a police stop, things like that. They just make stuff up based on a whim, and that's why a lot of times, especially if there's evidence, there's video evidence, for instance, in the case of David Boren or whomever, the charges ultimately end up getting dropped because the DA knows that they're bullshit charges and they're not going to be able to make them stick. But what happens in the situations where there is no video evidence of those bullshit charges? How many lives have been ruined? How many people have been saddled with felony convictions because some police officer or police officers' egos got bruised and they decided to take it out on the individual that bruised their egos?
For specific violations of the law, it has to be some sort of a penal code or a vehicle code or something that allows for the officer to make an arrest.
No shit.
And there is no crime out there that I know called contempt of cop. So when the cop arrests for the, in air quotes, contempt of cop, what the cop is actually doing is arresting for some other violation of the law. Disorderly conduct, failure to ID, whatever.
Failure to ID.
That is what the officer is arresting for. So when I said that the cops can only arrest you for violations of the law, for committing crimes,
and that's completely incorrect. Police officers can make stuff up and pretend that you violated a particular statute or whatever. They do whatever they want. They can lock you up for anything that they want. It's nothing for a police officer to just manufacture a charge just because he writes a charge down on your arrest affidavit or whatever. Doesn't mean that you actually committed that infraction. It just means that he says that you did. That's it. And they lie. Cops lie all the time, every day in and day out, 24/7. They lie.
Still stands. Your argument is, again, a bad argument because you're asserting that a cop reacting emotionally and deciding to make an arrest based on an emotional response is the same thing as the cop arresting someone based on his morals, which is different. And again, it's still down to whether or not what the actor was doing was legal or illegal.
I think Freeman was just trying to make a point He is an anarchist. I mean, he's already come out and admitted that. So, anarchist philosophy is very steeped in morality and immorality and that sort of thing. I personally don't fall into that category. I just look at it as right and wrong, man. I mean, moral, immoral, and moral just means right and wrong. What's right and wrong, and of course those ideas of morality and immorality are subject to the whim of the society. What is immoral in one society may not be immoral in another society, and what is moral to one person may be immoral to another person. It's very subjective. So there's really no point in even having a discussion based on things that are subjective like that. You know, it's pointless. It's a pissing contest. You might as well just piss up a rope. Stupid.
Second dumb argument that I've seen.
And this is really why I made the video, because I'm the one that made this quote unquote second dumb argument, which I feel is completely valid.
Over the weekend is that, yeah, well, the Nazis on trial at Nuremberg were also only following orders.
Which is true.
Which is a completely asinine argument. The Nazis on trial at Nuremberg were on trial for war crimes. They were accused of committing war crimes. Anywhere from starting a war, an unlawful war, whatever that is. I mean, that's a pretty fucking stupid thing to try someone over, but that's what some people were convicted of, all the way down to genocide, killing innocents.
Well, that's really incorrect. There were basically four charges, and I'm going off memory here. It was, engaging in aggressive warfare, engaging in crimes against humanity, engaging in. There were basically four charges, none of which were the charges that Merb states here. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Continue.
The gassing of the Jews, etc. There were also other trials at Auschwitz and other places. But that's the bulk of it. It's war crimes. That's what they were convicted of. They weren't convicted of obeying orders. Every soldier in Hitler's army was obeying orders when they were fighting against the Allies. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. And yet they were not charged with following orders.
I don't understand where you get that anybody was charged with saying that anybody was charged with following orders. That's not the point of the comment. The point of the comment is that I'm following orders is not a defense, right? I'm just doing my job is not a defense, right? If you're charged with doing something illegal or something immoral or whatever, and your answer is I'm just doing my job, that's not a defense. That's not a defense. It wasn't a defense at Nuremberg. And it's not a valid defense now. It's never a valid defense. It was illegal to be a Jew in Germany. I mean, this is just a fact, right? And I don't throw the Nazi the Nazi metaphors around willy-nilly here, but it's a valid metaphor. If it was illegal, it was against the law to be a Jew in Germany, and a German SS police officer arrests someone for being a Jew and hauls them off to jail, and they get shoved in a cattle cart and shipped off to Auschwitz and ultimately gassed. Well, is it the police officer's fault that they got gassed? Well, no, he was just following orders. He was just doing what he was told to do, regardless of, whether it was right or wrong. Hey, the law said it was illegal to be a Jew in Germany. So Merb's perspective is that the law is just the law. It's not moral or immoral. If you have a problem with the morality or immorality of the law, why don't you talk to the legislators? Why don't you go, say something to Hitler about, why is it illegal to be a Jew in Germany? You can't hold the police responsible for it. Well, bullshit, right? That's bullshit. If they're doing things that they know that they ought not be doing, then it's wrong, and it's not a defense to say, I'm just doing my job. It wasn't a defense when I was in the military. It wasn't a defense for, Nazis at Nuremberg, and it's not a defense for the typical beat cop, right? You want police officers that have a little bit more than looking at a particular situation and go, well, is the act lawful or unlawful, right? There has to be what they call discretion, and supposedly that is in the police officer's bag of tricks to engage discretion, and they often do, and they often should. They especially do when it's one of their fellow brothers in blue, or one of their family members who is being accused of something. Well, then the discretion is, oh, okay. Oh, you're a police officer too, eh? Just because you were speeding, I pulled you over, but you're a cop. I'll just give you a little bit of discretion. Hey, and they call it professional courtesy. And we've seen these videos. Yeah, so let's see if he's got anything else to say.
The people at Nuremberg were charged with war crimes. That is a substantial difference. Police officers aren't out there committing war crimes. Giving someone a speeding ticket is not a
Nobody's saying that. What we're saying, the comparison is being made, is locking a Jew up for being a Jew in Germany when it's illegal to be a Jew in Germany, is that a war crime? No, it isn't. There wasn't any war when they were doing that. They were doing that far before there was a war, right? And yeah, they didn't go through and try every freaking beat cop in Germany for just doing their job. But they would have all told you exactly. It was because it was impossible to do that. What they did was, after World War II, they did something called denazification, where they basically, obliterated every symbol of Nazism, made it illegal to make reference to being a Nazi, and this was a widespread philosophy. And the point being is, it's very easy to get people to do things that they ought not do, just by relieving them of the burden of responsibility for doing them. And that's what's happened to the police officers. You probably heard of the experiment, the shock experiment that was done, back in the 50s or 60s, whenever it was, where, they had you look it up, I forget the name of it, but basically you had a subject who didn't know it was an experiment, and then you had a professor or whatever, the guy running the experiment, and telling the person to induce shocks on an intended victim, and oftentimes people would just continue and go right up the scale, inducing those heavy shocks beyond the danger point, just because you could say, well, I'm being told to do it, right? It's not my problem. I'm just doing my job, kind of thing. And that's exactly what you got going on here. That's what the concern is.
fucking war crime. It's just an asinine argument. Another argument that I've heard is,
all right, that's enough. That's all I wanted to say. I made the argument. I don't think Merb really addressed it adequately. I mean, he starts babbling about people being charged with following orders and stuff like that, and that it's an asinine argument. Just stupid. He really didn't address anything. So that's it. That's all I want to say. Have a nice day.